Mostly from Sunflower to Ernest Robles to Jones. And I was just wondering why we don't have, so on Ernest Robles, we have those kind of low lights, which are nice. Like why we don't have matching lights like that along the trail on Jones.
Oh. Yeah, Sarah, hang on for a second. Karen sent a message just saying like maybe we should do a trial so everyone can figure out how to raise their hands. I don't know if Sylvia and Carolyn can see it or if everyone just practices raising their hands.
I have clicked on hand raising. I'm going to take it down now.
Sarah, what did you say?
Oh, I just said I clicked on hand raising.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I saw it.
So at least on my display, like if you go to attendees, you can look at your name and raise your hands. There are probably other ways to do it too. Does everybody see how to do that?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, cool. If you can't, make sure you chat with us so we can see that you're having problems. Okay, Sarah, do you want to finish your comment? So you were asking why we don't have matching lights along Jones Road compared to Ernest Robles?
Yes. So that is my main question. I'm sure it has something to do with dark sky ordinance. I'm just not sure why Ernest Robles gets it and that part of Jones doesn't. Because there are parts of it that are very dark, even at 6.
Yeah.
My second question / comment is, so we live on Sunflower, postage stamp sized lots, and I'll share my webcam actually while I'm talking. And so we don't know much about the water wastewater subsidy, and frankly, the water bill that we get now is basically the same as the water bill we got in our last house because our current lot is not that much bigger than our last house. So we just don't know much about it and how much it actually affects the budget or what the purpose of it is and all of that. So 2 topics I don't know much about and would love historical information on.
I was assuming that we were going to talk about water subsidies probably as part of 7. Carolyn, or do you want to give could you give some history on water subsidies, you know?
I mean, Sylvia probably knows the total amount right now,
Sure.
but I do know that water, yeah, if you want to go ahead and say that one.
Oh, it's fine with me. How about we save it until number 7 when we talk about finances in general? Is that okay?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anybody else have a citizen comment?
What about the lights?
Oh, yeah.
So the lights, actually, I mean, those are dark sky compliant lights that are on ERW. It didn't have anything to do with, I think, necessarily dark skies that ERW has those lights. I think it was just aesthetics when they built the road and were doing things over there. They just never put them in on Jones. That could be something to be considered in the future at some point.
We would love that. Sorry, and I realize I have a third small citizen comment.
Okay. Catherine, I saw you raise your hand after Sarah.
I know Catherine has her hand raised. I don't think this is much of a topic, but just an item for later. We used to walk often over to Funkadelic Outhouse area from Sunflower, and the quote unquote crosswalk that is across Ernest Robles right at 290. That thing scares the bejesus out of me. Really with a stroller, and I would love like the blinky light thing that's over on Ernest Robles by like the Coles area, or some other solution that makes it more visible, or just another path over to that little shopping area that is not 2 feet from 290.
So we've talked about that as part of like improving trails around Tony Burger and like just kind of improving walkability in the area in general. Like we definitely, I think, Carolyn, am I wrong? I thought you kind of had like a preliminary discussion with people over there about making a trail a lot farther away from the highway, like closer to Jones Road, so you don't
Yeah,
have to go near the feeder.
yeah, there was a discussion about at least putting a trail on the east side of Ernest Robles. So you didn't actually have to cross right there at 290 to put a trail like up by the bus barn side of it up to the, and it was going to cut in earlier away from the corner a little ways over into the 4715 area.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be really nice. Okay.
Yeah, when I first thought that would be the simplest solution, but I thought that maybe Austin ISD owned that strip of grass, but I don't know.
It would have been a joint partnership with the shopping center. I mean, the 4715.
Okay, Sarah, was that everything for you? All your comments?
At the moment.
Okay, Catherine, I knew you had something to say. Oh, I can't hear you.
Okay, now
Yes,
can you hear me?
yes, you're unmuted.
This might be something that falls under one of our agenda items. I just wanted to let you guys know that I did a very quick informal survey of as many residents as I could contact this afternoon and sent it to Carolyn. And I asked them kind of their top 3 reasons that they like living here or their top 3 important values for our city. And I just sent Carolyn the document that kind of shared the results. I ended up being able to record 17 responses. One of those is mine, but otherwise nobody else on this committee has responses in here. I just kind of wanted a broader picture of what people who may not participate in many of the city council meetings or committees have to say. The sample of people is pretty broad. It's residents who have lived here for a very long time and are retired, all the way to young families who've only lived here for shorter periods of time.
Cool.
It was just very interesting. I included, it's not a beautiful document because I threw it together in the last minute, but I recorded everyone's verbatim text response or emailed response to me down below, and I tried to divide them into different categories just so people could read actual comments too if they're interested.
That's great.
As we're thinking about the future, it was helpful to me. I know what's important to me, but it was really interesting to see what other people said were their most important things, the things they loved most right now about living here without anything changing, what they're happy with now.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's good to keep people in mind who are actually not on the committee. Does anybody else have any citizen comments they want to add? Okay.
Helen,
Yeah.
Helen has her
Yeah.
hand.
I'm sorry. I'm not using a very old computer. My speaker doesn't work very well, and I'm assuming if you're looking at a photograph of me, you're seeing a ceiling somewhere because I'm not in front of my computer. I'm in front of another screen. But the questionnaire, is this a questionnaire that we were all given in the city?
Nope.
Okay.
I just was talking to some people and I was just letting them know that this is a meeting where we're going to be doing some planning. So, think about like what is important to you and what you want to see reflected in what we do in the future.
Okay, that sounds great. Is there some way that you could email those results to us, because I couldn't see it on the screen.
Yeah, I actually can just reply all to the email from earlier and include it as a PDF if that works.
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Catherine. Okay, does anybody else have anything they want to add before we move on to the meeting minutes? Okay, I don't see anyone raising their hand. So, okay, Carolyn, when you have a minute, can we look at the meeting minutes?
Yes. So let me grab those up for you.
Okay.
Ellen, did you still want your hand raised?
Okay.
So I'm assuming AISD will not be presenting anytime soon until post-COVID. And
I believe that is true.
okay. All right. Are y'all ready to scroll down a little further?
Yes. Carolyn, can you zoom that in?
Catherine has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Catherine?
I was just wondering, I am assuming that April 7th meeting, that they did not discuss that.
No, that was canceled, right, Carolyn? And like it's just kind of on hiatus for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It was postponed because of COVID.
It just feels like everything is on hiatus right now.
We're in a suspension mode.
Pretty much. Okay. Do we has everyone,
I'm going to unmute everybody so they can make the motion. Okay, everybody's unmuted to make the motion.
Wait, I have
does
a
somebody wanna make
question.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah.
About number 7. 7.
Oh.
Let me go back.
6 minutes.
Do we have any updates on that trail connection?
No, we have not done anything
We
on
never
that.
received a formal,
Sorry, we never received a formal what?
Yeah.
we never received a formal written request by the property owner for a purchase. There was some discussion, but there was never a formal request submitted.
Okay.
Oh, so okay. So there's no like budgeted money for that.
No.
No.
And I'm assuming that as part of the planning, we're going to talk a little about programs that are suspended and canceled, and things like acquisitions and stuff would probably be on that list, right? Or like any kind of formal acquisition at least.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if everyone has had a chance to look at the minutes, can somebody make a motion about approving the minutes? Or is there a need for further discussion?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Who's in
Was that
favor?
Sarah?
That was Sarah Ponder.
Yes,
Yep.
motion by Catherine and seconded by Sarah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Who's in favor?
Yes?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Oh, Helen, it looks
Helen
like
has
you
her
got your
hand
hand raised.
I raised my hand on the screen. I don't know what that does.
That like when you're muted, it lets someone know that you want to speak, but you're welcome to just speak now.
Okay. Thank you. I've
Oh,
not done this
were you
before.
voting to approve the minutes?
Pardon?
Were you voting to approve the minutes, or did
Yes.
you want to say? Oh, okay.
Yes. As amended.
Awesome.
What was
Okay.
the amendment?
Yeah.
As amended.
Were the minutes amended though?
Well,
What was the amendment?
I said to put distemper in that it was a sick raccoon so that we're not just reporting that Lucy saw a raccoon. Big deal.
Oh, did you just say that? I don't think anyone heard you say that.
Oh,
Or
that was my comment on the, yeah, well, I said it. Maybe I didn't hear it.
no, I didn't hear you verbally say
Okay, so, Lucy also reported she has seen a second raccoon. Maybe we should, that's not very newsworthy unless you know it's sick.
that. Okay. Do we have to do a second set of motions for after we amend the minutes?
Not if the motion maker approves the amendment.
Catherine, is that okay?
I approve the amendment.
Thank you.
As the second.
So much power,
Sarah, is that
Catherine.
okay with you too?
Who's the second?
Oh,
Sarah,
yeah.
are you
Oh,
okay
yep.
with
That sounds great.
that? Okay.
Sarah.
All right. Okay, let's move on to Karen's report. Karen, can you brief us on what's going on?
I'm gonna mute everybody
Sure.
again.
Okay, and let's see. I see a note here from Rose. It seemed like Helen asked if the survey was a formal city survey, and that we might want to clarify that that answer was given to her. It was not a formal city survey. It was an individual survey by Catherine, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So other than that, so on item number 8 on our agenda, we were going to talk about the May 23rd joint meeting of the committees with council, and that has been postponed. So I just want to give everybody a heads up on that, so we don't need to put anything together. The other thing with us being in the middle of the disaster with COVID-19, council is going to start doing, starting tomorrow night, a COVID-19 budget work session where we'll actually be going through the changes, what's happening with the shopping center, getting reports. There won't be any official action. It'll be a time for council and everyone to hear the most current information we have on where we are financially with our income and with our expenses and with what's happening with the disaster. And eventually, hopefully, some point in time, we'll be free again to start looking at what recovery looks like. And I think the rest of the changes we'll be going through as we look at the next item, which is the city projects and environmental programs.
Okay. All right. Carolyn, are you going to brief us on the city projects then?
Sure. I'm gonna pull up a thing that it'll be just a council in the work session tomorrow night. So this is an item that talks about the different services and programs that were kind of canceled, like meaning they're not going to, you know, some of them have already happened, or they're not going to be happening for the remainder of this fiscal year. Suspended, they may happen again at some point this year, or if they're active programs. And so this is a list of items that council has kind of decided to put into those categories and where they're at. So you can kind of see here, some of these are items that the community events that we had talked about in a previous meeting. Some of them are also services that were offered by Public Works, and some of them are projects. And so you can kind of see it's a pretty long list. So a lot of these things were canceled. Some of them have already happened for the 1920. And of course, anything that requires people to gather has been very much put on hold. But there's projects too, like 34 Reese improvements, the Upper Cougar Creek Trail, Green Program, Homestead Park planning. All of those things have been canceled to, you know, save money for, you know, due to the loss of revenue from the shopping center. And then so we can keep going down. There's a lot of other projects and some things that have been suspended too. So you can kind of look through here and kind of see where the status of things are. A lot of the big street projects are going to be reviewed by the Public Works Committee in next week, actually. So that's kind of the status there. So during COVID-19, there's a lot of things that are, you know, we're not doing. So just kind of give you a heads up on that. Things are going to look a little bit different for a while.
Catherine has her hand up.
Oh, Catherine, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you explain to me again the difference between suspended and canceled?
I think cancel basically means that it's like done for the year or the fiscal year. But I mean, council can of course always resurrect anything. I think suspended is more of like during the disaster declaration, it's not going to happen. But they may come back after a period of time, but they may come back different.
Okay. I just saw so many things that were listed as canceled on the first page that you showed us. And I didn't know if that was indefinite or like the curbside.
At least for the rest of the fiscal year.
For the rest of the fiscal
Yeah, at least for the rest of the fiscal year. And that, yes, and that really is to give the council an opportunity. If you go look at the posted agenda, you'll see there's a budget at a glance, and you'll see all of the money pots that are out there, what's in fund balance, what's required reserve, what we've spent. So at this point in time, it's really just like you would in your household budget. You take a good scrub and see, okay, what can I kind of do without right now? So canceled means till the end of the year for whatever reason, and then suspended is just for now. Like there was a question on mulch and mulch delivery. Well, that's sort of a double-edged sword because it allows us to, you know, less water usage, and less water usage translates into a less City of Austin water bill. So that's one of those that we've suspended. They resurrect at some point in time. And any one of those, as council discusses and the committees discuss, if there's an item that that somebody believes is health and safety related, because that's what we're focusing right now, somebody believes is health and safety related, then it would merit a conversation in one of the off meetings that Karen's talking about in between the council meetings.
Okay. And so when the next fiscal year begins, if things have returned to normal, you know, depending on the budget, all of these things could be back on, even though they're marked as canceled.
They could be.
Yeah,
But
so Catherine, what council did on Tuesday night was basically eliminate for the rest of this fiscal year any non-essential service.
Right.
And it's for this fiscal year, which ends September 30.
Right.
budget planning will start, and I think budget has set their first meeting for this coming Thursday, and they'll start talking about how we're going to do the budget process, and council will be talking about that in the session tomorrow night. Is because there's so many unknowns, it'll most likely be a process. We wouldn't start everything up all at once. We'd have to see when business starts to ramp up, when we start to get the sales tax revenue coming back into the city, and it most likely will be a plan that's a short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Right now, most governments are talking about anywhere from 6 months to 18 months to full recovery. And who knows? It's just a guess right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, we don't really know the financial impact yet, right? Like as I understand it, we haven't seen the dip in revenue. Like it takes a couple of months for that. Is that right?
The sales tax revenue is like 3 months. It comes in a quarterly. So
Okay.
we made projections on what we thought we were going to get on the sales tax revenue based on last year. But sales tax, I think it comes in it's 3 months, and then on the 4th month we get the check or something.
No,
But
we're 2 months in arrears. So we just received February numbers. We just received a check for February, but that's received in April. So we're always 60 days in arrears. We have an 11% reduction already that we saw from February that happened based on budget. So we're already seeing the decline. And yes, it is an estimate. I've been super criticized about, we don't really have a real number. Well, in damage assessment, one of the things you do is go do a windshield survey. And so that's what we did. We went, if anybody has walked the shopping centers, I really, really help me with that windshield survey, because we're doing it every day or every other day, trying to see who's open, who is open with some modification, and who has given up trying to be open. Urban Mattress is my example. They were open one day, and then after a couple of days said, no, we can't sustain this amount. The overhead is too much. And then we have like Zoe's, who's doing wonderful modified curbside service, but even Zoe's is telling us they're off 60% off their revenues.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So taking into account what they would have normally received, we have large aggregate sectors, like we know restaurants give this much. And so we did a projection based on a reduction of 80% of sales tax for the month of March, April, May, June, July, August, and September. So for the next 7 months.
Okay.
Sarah has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Can you clarify, did you say that we're projecting an 80% reduction for 7 months?
Yes.
Were there alternative projections done?
Nope. That was based on actual footwork, actual discussion with the landlords of the shopping center, actual census information from, again, going door to door, actual information of talking to the managers. Even the hotel, we actually overestimated the hotel. I said the hotel was going to have 10% occupancy. Well, he called me and said, I have 0 occupancy, not 10. So significant impact.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, particularly for March and April. I'm just wondering,
Beyond that.
you know, everything's day by day, and of course, certain sectors will kind of roll back on and off. And so I was wondering if alternative projections were done, and because it sounds like if
So we one of the scenarios was 80% for the March, April, May timeframe, and then we ramp up to 60% receipts, and then we ramp up to 40% receipts. So that's one of the ones we're playing on. Obviously, it all depends on the orders that get issued from Travis County and really from the state. And we had another order issued at 3 o'clock today that is going to ratchet things down even further. So we're going to release that in our bulletin. So we're trying to go with the flow. We're trying to go with the punches. We just never know where that next punch is coming from at this particular point in time.
Can you tell us what has changed since the new orders?
More restrictive, mask required, criminal charges imposed. The essential businesses are getting ratcheted down even further,
Are they taking-
and really opening the door for stop questioning.
So wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing you said. Opening the door to what?
To stopping and questioning people who are out, either in, a small group or doing something that doesn't appear to be quote unquote essential.
Okay, sure. Okay.
This is one of the reasons that we're going to start doing the COVID budget work sessions so that we have accurate information as it comes in, because this is such unknown territory. It's anybody's guess right now where we're going to end up and what businesses are going to reopen and what businesses are going to fold.
Right. So, Carolyn, so another update on this. I'm not sure if you're done with the city projects and environmental programs. If you were gonna.
Yeah, if you have something to add, you can add something.
Well, I was gonna ask, could you talk about the reduction in force that occurred?
Sure. So, if you did not know, Public Works, there were about 5 staff members that were laid off last week. So there's a reduction in force to the Public Works Department. So that's also, I mean, that will change. We're coming up with the essential services and whatnot, the things that we can do and we will be able to do going forward. So that would affect what we can offer to as services in the future.
So I have a concern when we're operating with this information in this kind of tumultuous time where things are getting ratcheted down all the time and we're not really clear on how long things will last. To me, it makes perfect sense to talk about suspending things and just kind of keeping in a wait and see pattern for a little bit. But I don't really understand the impetus to lay people off. Like, we haven't really been in this situation for that long. And I'm not really sure of why it was required at this point, like the imminent financial demands that would have made something like that necessary. I'd like to understand that more. Like, are we talking about more layoffs within the city?
Sarah has
Potentially.
Sarah,
Potentially.
did you hold your hand up?
I'm sorry. Go, Sarah.
Yeah, I wanted to second that. My husband heard that we have, I don't know, a year and a half of reserves. So I just don't know how that's going into being taken into account as we think about laying people off.
And Helen has her hand up.
Helen?
There's a difference. Am I muted?
No, we can hear you now.
Okay. That there's a difference between layoff and termination. That I was told that these employees were fired. They were not laid off. They have no severance pay. They have no nothing. And when you lay off people, I understand you get some benefits. So I would like to have that clarified. Yeah, also, I think there's going to be something at the workshop on Tuesday, that's tomorrow, that there's some confusion about whether the council actually wanted to do these layoffs or the terminations and how those were chosen. It was like there was a general discussion about terminating employees, but there were no names. There was no vote. There was not anything. Now, the mayor has the right to fire. She doesn't have to have anyone's permission. But in the history of Sunset Valley, that's never happened, except maybe with Sarah. But then again, that was the mayor. So, the current mayor. So it's unprecedented. Well, let me go back. They also fired Sean. So I don't know how that happened. I know nothing about that, and I don't want to get into it. But my understanding is that on this particular group of firings that the there was probably enough votes to give the mayor the ability to do that, but that did not even happen. It was not clear, nor was there any time to discuss it because it wasn't on the agenda in the first place, and that it was thought that would be brought up, say, this Tuesday or at another meeting to confirm whether they wanted to do that or not, and get more input from the residents, of which there were none before this happened. There's also, I've been talking to some people on the budget committee who say that we have $2 million in reserves, and the reserves are for exactly this. And we've been told that for years, that we have to have all this reserves so we can protect the city and its employees. And the first thing we do is terminate employees in the middle of a pandemic.
So Rose has her hand up.
Yes, Rose, did you want to address those?
There's lots of opinion-based things in there. So the only part that I want to clarify is, one, Chief Ford was not fired. That was many years ago. He was not fired. That can be factually checked. Two, the mayor does not have the authority to fire, period. So it's just factually inaccurate. Sylvia can qualify that, and anybody can pull the personnel. So in 10 years of being in this position, I do not have the authority to fire. There were 5 votes. Actually, the vote was unanimous. There is now a question from 2 of the council members about whether they fully understood what they were voting for. The city attorney has confirmed that proper notice was given and that there was clear understanding from the mayor, the city administrator, and the city attorney what was being voted on. And that even if we were to recall, there's been question about if we're going to revisit it. So to revisit it would mean that it gets put on another agenda, which means you would vote on it again. In order to do that, council would have to agree that they want that. So I just want to make sure there's not factual inaccuracy about what's happening. Tomorrow's meeting is not a meeting to discuss what happened last Tuesday. It is a budget work session. So it is to discuss budgetary needs by council and the community moving forward.
Okay, and Rose, just, I was not at the meeting, so I don't know any of this, but I did look up TML and went to the what mayors can and cannot do, and it did say that they had the ability to fire without any other input. That was something I just saw on the TML. Well, maybe.
Right, that's just not our personnel.
It's on their website. It's on their website. That's all. So
Rose,
I did
And
check
Sylvia,
it.
you might be able to qualify. Sylvia, you might be able to qualify. TML may have best practices or what is allowed, but we are allowed to have more restrictive personnel requirements on top of that.
Okay.
Correct. We have several different types of cities. We have several different type of.
So for clarification, they were layoffs, correct?
Correct. It was a reduction in force. It was a
And
layoff.
Okay, so
And
that means
also
there
a
is a
point of
severance.
right, and a point of clarification when we talk about severance, just so that it's clear, it's not a matter of choice. That are, again, and this came up with when Sarah's position was terminated, council would have to give authority and discretion to the city administrator and the mayor to issue severance. Our current personnel policy doesn't allow for that. So I don't want there to be the misconception that council either didn't direct that or that the mayor or city administrator didn't award it. Our current policy doesn't allow for it. So council would have to revise their policy.
Okay, so they are not receiving a severance, the employees who are separated.
That is correct. It's my understanding then as laid off employees, they can file for unemployment.
Okay.
And I believe, Sylvia, you could, since again, I wasn't involved in the actual, I believe it, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that it was that they were paid through the end of the month. And in terms of the health benefits, 401k and that, you would be the one that's in the best position to answer that, not me.
Correct. They were, there's no official severance package, but the estimates we gave to the council included expenditures through April. So we paid them through the month of April, and their health insurance also goes through the remainder of April. We were cognizant of, even if a council member had requested severance, that would have prolonged the time they're able to get unemployment benefits. Right now, there's a window of time where they're able to get unemployment plus an extra $600, which for our maintenance techs, for example, is almost equivalent to what they were receiving in pay. And I know it's not the same thing, and I know it's difficult. So weighing what was in their best interest and how soon benefits could start and how soon we could do that, that's why the decision was made. That, and I had several employees who were actually in the council meeting listening virtually. It's very unnerving to be in a council meeting where you know jobs are going to be lost. It would have been very unfair for the employees to wait another several weeks to wonder if that's going to be them. So I made the decision to say, okay, I'm going to let the folks know who need to know. That's part of it. And then the other part of it is the council sent, well, 3 council members, and at that particular moment in time, a unanimous vote, sent a particular message about the drawdown of reserves would not happen until absolutely necessary. And so we presented several scenarios with actual bare bones, how much that would draw down reserves. Without a bare bone budget, we'd be drawing reserves almost $300,000 a month. And if you look at that budget at a glance that's in tomorrow's workshop, you'll see that. Even with bare bones, even with eliminations, we're still drawing down about $135,000 a month. I keep alluding to this event as a flood event because that's what you guys in Sunset Valley understand. You understand flooding and you understand water. So your first wave comes in the rainfall and you get water in the structure and you have to address it immediately. The second wave comes when the river crests and the downstream impact happens. We haven't seen the river crest. In fact, we're doing damage assessment in the middle of the event, which is right now, I'm just checking for loss of life if I were really doing an event, because the event isn't over and several businesses who are open today won't be open next week. So the projections also accounted for ramping up. They have to go back and be able to find those employees they had furloughed or riffed. They have to be able to go back and get their supply chains intact. They've got to be able to do a lot of the things that are disrupted right now. And quite honestly, a lot of them have dipped into reserves. I've had a lot of calls about how to apply for SBA loans, et cetera, et cetera. So the smaller businesses specifically are going to have a harder time being able to ramp up. That's why we did such a quick and decisive move. That's why the projections are as low as they are, because we are still in the middle of the event.
Yep.
Lucy, I
So
see you
your
have
hand
your
up
hand raised.
visually.
Lucy, I saw you,
Okay,
you
Lucy.
have your hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wondered, was the decision made about those employees, was it based on time served, how long they had been employed, and you let go the people that had been hired most recently up to number 5?
Actually, Lucy, no, I let the supervisors have input.
Okay.
Not having been there as long as I had, I let the
Right.
supervisors have input. Carolyn had input. It was a very difficult decision. We never take those decisions lightly. Very, very difficult. I mean, it's my hope. And we offered everybody a couple of things. We offered everybody a letter of recommendation. And we also offered everybody assistance. If you need to come use a computer at Public Works or you need to come use a computer at City Hall, we'll help you with resume building. We'll help you with submittal. We'll help you with your TWC claim, with whatever help we can provide.
Right. It's not my business really. I just wondered if that's how it was done, but it makes sense to have the supervisors give input about who's the most crucial and who probably could be let go. I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen has her hand up.
Helen, yeah?
Yes. Josh, who was Josh's supervisor that would suggest that he leave? Because I thought he was kind of head of the department now, so he had to have a supervisor above him that recommended that. That's one question. And I just want to comment, I have friends who work at a hotel and they've been laid off. They will come back. They cannot get into the Texas Workforce Commission to even file an application for unemployment because they're so flooded that they have no one to do the work. So there's no way that people are going to get their applications in and processed. The state is way, way behind in that. So I do think that the city could have been a bit more compassionate, and I think that they could have handled this in a very, very different way. And that's all I'll say, because it's done, but I don't think it's going to go away.
So Helen, just FYI,
So Helen,
I did see a notice that the Texas Workforce Commission has hired and trained some more staff, and they're actually going to be now open 7 days a week. So hopefully that will, as all the states are dealing with this, with the number of people that have filed for unemployment, hopefully that will help.
So I'll answer the Josh supervisor. I am Josh's supervisor. And when having to weigh programs and projects cut, I also had to weigh the licensing within the department. Daniel was the utility superintendent, and Daniel has run a municipal water district. Daniel has the appropriate certifications. So for those folks who believe our water supply is not protected, that's untrue. We have a person who is way able to run what we need to run. Again, Helen, if you know you were faced with a difficult decision and keeping a supervisor, etc., the decision that I made, I will stand behind, and I'm happy to have a private conversation with you and Carolyn and Karen, but I stand behind the decision.
Okay.
Looks like we lost some people. There looks like they're coming back on now. Lucy, Rose went offline.
Yeah, Zoe did too.
Zoe,
Yeah,
Sorry,
she's back
guys.
now.
I was disconnected.
not sure what happened there. We lost like 5 people all at once. Oh, Rose is back. Okay.
Hi, sorry. I know at our house we had a power glitch. I'm not sure
Really?
what,
Okay.
like, if a bunch of people experienced it. Yeah, our power just kind of shut off.
Aneska went off too. So.
Yeah.
And Lucy.
Yeah,
Sarah's gone.
Lucy, Rose,
Rose is back.
Sarah. Hopefully people, okay, Rose is back. Hopefully Lucy and Sarah will come back.
Yeah, we'll give them a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Karen, did everybody get knocked off, or was that just me?
A whole group did.
I got knocked off too. Oh yeah, Rose, that makes sense. We got knocked off too. And Sarah.
I don't know what got
Sarah,
lost, but I wanted
Lucy. We're kind of waiting to see if everybody comes back on.
yeah, and just as Sylvia and Zoe and Karen are moderating, the only thing I just wanted to give a very important disclaimer. We're on a recorded session that will forever be archived, so I would strongly encourage us not to do anything that could in any way be used to harm an employee in their future search for work. So I don't think we should be discussing any personal details about any of our employees, including what supervisors may or may not have said about them.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, not sure. I don't see Sarah.
She says she's having trouble connecting. I just got a text from her.
Oh, okay. And Aneska?
Yeah.
It must be a Villa's conspiracy, Zoe.
I know, exactly. It just knocked off a bunch of us. There's a
No, Lucy got kicked off too.
Carolyn, what'd you say?
Lucy got kicked off too, and she doesn't live in the villas.
Oh, okay.
So it just didn't make it to Pillow yet.
Okay, I think Anushka may be back on.
Yep.
Okay, but Sarah said she's having trouble connecting, so hopefully she'll rejoin in a minute. And I think that's everyone.
No, Lucy.
Oh,
and
yeah,
Karen.
Okay,
Lucy's-
yeah, Lucy still says offline. You know, I am never seeing anyone's hand raised as long as we're talking about like the meeting. Like I keep scrolling down the list, but I only like I see in someone's picture, like I've seen Catherine like physically raise her hand.
It turns up like a little yellow in the hand column.
Yeah, I get maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm just scrolling at the wrong time or
So
something.
Catherine just raised
Yeah, I
her
see you
hand.
raising your hand now. Anushka, you're back on. We got knocked off too. Okay, and
Lucy's back on.
Lucy's back on. Okay, so we're getting started again. Okay, and
Yes.
all right. And Rose made an important point that we can talk about personnel only in general because all of this is a recorded call. We don't want to say anything about any employee in particular. Okay, so we are on number 5, right? Like, that was disorienting. We're still discussing that. I maybe this ties into number 6. I just know I'm concerned about the loss of expertise. Like I know that layoffs and reductions in force can be important tools, and I know they can be called for. I'm just worried that it feels like we jumped to that conclusion without exploring a lot of other things, like other reductions in budget, like water subsidies, and like I don't know if those are on the list of suspended programs or not, or if water subsidies are going to continue.
That's going to be dependent on a council motion.
Yeah.
Okay. I just like, to me, it seems like, one of the things we offer as a city is the skill and expertise of the staff that support the city. And, cities like may not be able to offer a lot of pay. One thing they can offer is stability. And I know this is an unprecedented event, but I have concerns that it will make it more difficult for Sunset Valley to hire experienced people in the future. I just worry about, what this means for our city. And I'm also really concerned that council didn't necessarily completely understand what they were voting for. Some people still feel like they didn't understand the motion. I'm sorry, I heard someone speaking. Was somebody raising their hand?
No, I had the mute. I had the mute button wrong. And Zoe,
Okay.
I fully appreciate your comments. Trust me, when I was doing the review and I got, I don't think anybody was as shocked with a 5 vote than I was, and I expected some more discussion. But I can tell you that the city of Sunset Valley is still a very good place to work. The benefits are still head and shoulders above any neighboring city. I can tell you that the expertise that we were able to keep, if you and I were able to have a private conversation about it, I think you would come to the same conclusion. And that's all I can say. I trust me. I feel you. These aren't easy. These are never easy. But at the same time, I'm going to tell you that balancing the budget is not going to be easy. Even from this point forward, it's not going to be easy. And I think the Sunset Valley of January 15th is going to look a lot different than the Sunset Valley going forward. And it's my hope that as we do the budget with OpenGov, that it really is truly as transparent as it can be. And people really pay attention now to what is going on, and people really pay attention to where the dollars and cents go, because the pennies add up. And if we're going to be a community that embraces its population, its senior population, and wants to be able to offer subsidies, and we've got to figure out a way to do that, because somebody asked a question about the subsidies earlier, and that their water bill was the same as somebody else. Well, that's if you're getting it directly from Austin. We're a water purchaser from Austin, so we buy it wholesale. And then truly in every other city across this country, the utility fund, the solid waste fund, are enterprise funds, meaning they make money and they kick back to support the general fund. In Sunset Valley, the general fund supports the utility fund. That's a rarity in cities and municipal government. We also have what are called special revenue funds, where it's kind of a hybrid approach. We don't have those. For us, it's the general fund that is the donkey and bears the most weight in the work. So that is where the majority of the cuts were made, because that's where it's felt immediately. The general fund does have a fund balance. It has a healthy fund balance, but given that we don't know, given that one, we're probably going to stop replenishing reserves, right? So given that we're not going to be adding into that balance, then we've got to talk about how fast that balance gets drawn down. And as we start drawing down those balances and start drawing down the fund balances, then trust me, the conversations are going to start about how much of the subsidy goes away. And I know folks have also been batting around the property tax thing. And some folks did back of the envelope calculations over the weekend, which I don't disagree with. And if we were to impose a property tax, it's only an additional $500,000 a year. It still doesn't get us to where any one of the programs could have survived any kind of cuts. So taking into account a property tax, taking into account an elimination of subsidies, it's going to be about a $5,000 to $6,000 impact per household. So that is what the council is trying to avoid. They're trying to mitigate that impact and push that impact out as far as possible.
Okay. Sylvia, so Aneshka has her hand up, and also, I don't know, Sarah left and I saw her name, but she just confirmed she's still not part of the meeting. I don't know if we need to wait for Sarah to rejoin or if it's okay to continue without her.
So you might want to try calling in on the phone line.
Okay. I'll ask her. What number would she call?
Hold
Isn't
on,
there a number?
I can find that.
There's a number on the website.
Okay.
And it's on the agenda, right at the top of the agenda.
Oh, okay. Let me. Okay, I'll send that to her.
Aneshka, I don't see your hand anymore. Did you still want to say something?
Yeah. I feel so horrible about everything that's going on with everybody, and obviously with the news. I mean, when you hear like that there were 6,000 people at a food bank in San Antonio like a couple of days ago, and 10,000 in Houston, like it's really heartbreaking what this is going to do to us economically, like just worldwide. I think I'm looking at this really big picture, and I think it's really hard because it literally is an existential threat. Like the budget of the city of Sunset Valley is like, I think it's like $5 million per year. We're not going to get there with subsidies. We're not going to get there with property tax. We're not going to get there by cutting one thing versus cutting another. We're not going to get there. And I think we have to think about this very systemically and just very like big picture, because unfortunately you can't nickel and dime our budget and our subsidies and programs to $5 million. It just the math just won't get us there. And so I think it's basically you have an operating budget of $5 million, even if we try to find different ways to generate revenue, which is not a bad thing, but it's just so hard to get there. So, and I think that the people on this call know more than I do, because y'all have been in this town for decades and decades and decades. So y'all know the size of the government that the town had in the 90s or in the 2000s or in 2005, when we didn't have necessarily that level of income being generated from the stores. I would probably consider more taking some time, like has been said by Terry and other people, to kind of see. It's not like you can't prepare for it because things are happening, but actually seeing kind of what is going to actually happen. What can keep using the reserves fund and keep trying to figure out what we can do to get those businesses to generate the level of income that they used to as quickly as possible. And if they're not, then on some level, then it's going to have to become out of our fixed operating budget. I don't believe in selling the uplands. I don't believe in selling an asset that right now the market is low, so you wouldn't even get like as much money as you could for it. But even then, you sell it once and then you don't have it anymore, right? Like it's like all of these other things are like, it's like every year. I don't believe you can pay $5 million to run this city every single year if you don't have a certain amount of revenue. And I don't believe that we can get to that certain amount of revenue by cutting programs or by subsidies or even by taxes. Like we're going to have to figure out how to fix the commerce. And in the meantime, I think there's going to be some real bad depression-esque pains in our city budget and our city whole. And I guess that's why we have the reserves for, but I hate to see it kind of start getting so divisive already, you know. But anyway, but it's just a really difficult scenario, obviously.
I hope you all attend the meeting tomorrow night, because I think it's important for us all to be mindful of where we are in any given moment in this disaster, and get the most updated information that we can, so we all are informed about what the status is. We're still in the event of this disaster. We haven't gotten past that yet. We're not at recovery yet. Everyone in the world is still trying to figure out, what does this really mean for us?
Yeah. All right. I know Sarah is trying to call in. I don't know if she's been able to make it yet.
I'm
Oh.
here. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I tried two different computers and kept trying to dial in. Your friendly neighborhood millennial is terrible at technology.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Just had you walk across the street.
I know. So
Okay.
was it our entire neighborhood? Was it just you and me?
No, it was a bunch of us, Rose and Lucy and Aneshka and a bunch of us.
Okay. Well, I don't know what's wrong with my computer.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, so we've discussed number 5. Does anybody have anything they want to add before we move on to number 6?
At the moment, you're going to have to read to me what those items are. I can't see the agenda.
Sure. So we were discussing update on city projects, environmental programs. We were discussing, we were kind of leading into number 6, basically talking about some cuts that may need to be made, or like basically how are we going to support our city? So if nobody has anything they want to add, I think it's probably time to move forward to number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Planning and okay. So I guess number 6, I share Aneshka's concern that we have assets like the uplands, and my fear is that we're going to say, okay, let's sell it, and we get a lot less than it's worth because we're doing it out of like desperation. So I'm concerned about like some of the things we could do that wouldn't necessarily serve our city well. And I'm not really aware of some of the options we could have to help bolster our budget. Like, to me, it's obvious that we can cut things like all the programs that are canceled and suspended. Like, I think that's a great first step. Talking about like some of the big budget items, whether or not they need to be continued, but beyond that, like as ways of raising money, I'm not sure what we could do. Catherine, I see you have your hand raised. Hey.
Hey, Catherine.
Sorry, there you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
One of the things that I was thinking about that we have talked a lot about for the uplands is leasing to an urban farm. And, I just wondered if one of those ideas would be feasible even in a time like this, where it wouldn't require much on the city's part. And we all know that everybody's stocking up on food constantly, and maybe something like that could thrive and bring in some additional income to our city through a lease that's not, building on the site or doing a lot with that site other than potentially farming on it, or a portion of it even. In some ways, I I am in complete agreement that I don't think that the uplands should be sold. Um, and for me personally, that would be at any time, not even at this time, but also not in the future, because I think it's a good asset and something that we could use in a way that represents the values of our city and what our residents would like for it to be used for. So just ideas like that, something that could be done sooner rather than later, that could start bringing in a little bit of income and could serve a purpose like growing food in our community that could be purchased.
Yeah, I like that.
I guess one thing I could add, this is kind of a small piece, but I currently receive food delivery from a small business here in Austin called Lettuce, and they work with local farmers and they put together meal kits. They get meat from local places and put all the ingredients together, and then all the produce is locally grown. Occasionally there are items they can't source and they get it from the grocery store, but and then they deliver that with the recipes and everything. And I know something that they used to do is they would help people or use land to set up urban farms for some of that produce that was then, getting delivered around our city to people for meals. But there may be other businesses like that too, or, farmers looking for space.
That's a cool idea. I feel like one thing that the whole COVID thing made clear is it would be really nice to have a grocery store in Sunset Valley. Like, it would be nice to have more diversified presences in our shopping centers. I don't know, like, that seems like kind of a long range thing, but I don't know if there's an opportunity for Sunset Valley to like recruit businesses or incentivize some kinds of businesses. I don't understand the economics of the shopping centers and how they work.
I had also, I'm sorry, I'm still unmuted.
Oh, you can hear me though. This is Helen. I just wanted to say that Catherine, that I have used Lettuce. They came and helped us put in an organic garden, raised garden at our place. And that's really a wonderful idea. I think that is something that could be pursued if the council desired that. And another point about the grocery store, we did have a Sprouts in our shopping center for a while, but they opted to go to Birdie Oaks. And I think that was because we have an HEB just right down the street. And so there was just too much competition. So even though I would love to have a Sprouts like store back, I think it'd be really difficult to get one here unless it was some kind of a specialty store that we could actually draw people to the shopping center.
Yeah.
I like the idea of an urban farm too, because I think right now people are really learning so much that really your health is everything, like, and even like, I don't know, like, I think people, I mean, you just see like how many, like the sales of Airborne have gone up, the sales of fruit, have gone up. And then with a lot of the supply chains, those have been disturbed. And so it's kind of, I think it is like, I think it would be something that would be really appealing to have access to local produce.
Catherine, did you have? Okay. Catherine has her hand up.
All right, Catherine.
The other thing that we have kind of talked about is extending our farmers market to another day of the week, or having a place where they could sell produce in addition to Saturday mornings. And I don't know if there's anything that we could work out with them that would be beneficial to the city it does give people another option right now to get fresh food, which is honestly for us the thing that we have to think about the most frequently for the grocery store visits. Your spaghetti and cans of, tomatoes or whatever will keep forever, but lettuce doesn't.
You're right.
So I think that, often we're having to make grocery runs for things like produce that potentially farmers could be selling more of if we had an additional day of the week for kind of a small market. But I don't know how much that benefits the city in terms of, a little additional income. It would certainly benefit residents, but.
True. And I don't know how, if that's feasible for them. I don't know if there's a reason they've only offered the farmer's market one day. You could always reach out to them.
One of the things I think would be helpful too is like with lettuce, and if anyone is finding ways to get fresh produce, could we give that information and to Carolyn so it could get put on the city's website so everybody could see it? And then I did see something about some of the restaurants actually sourcing through their sources and selling produce. I don't know if any of ours are doing that, but if anyone hears that stuff, we could just get that stuff up on our website. That might be helpful to our residents.
I think there's
Mighty Fine is doing it.
I'm sorry.
Mighty Fine is doing it. Red Robin is doing it. A good portion of our restaurants are doing it, and that's really because restaurants have supply chain agreements that they need to honor. Otherwise, they may lose that supplier. So they are trying to sell those. So for example, at Mighty Fine, you can buy a package for a family of 4. You can buy the hamburger buns, the patties, the lettuce, the tomato, the pickles at a really great cost. And it's a way to help save our local. Not that lettuce isn't good, but please go investigate what your locals are doing to help them stay afloat.
Right.
And
Docs
can
is
we
doing
put that on the website?
Yes.
Catherine has.
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen. Catherine, I saw you raise your hand.
Yes. Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I was just going to comment. I know Doc's Backyard, we got takeout from them. They have dollar margaritas if you get an entree, just FYI. But they and Cruzteca, I saw, have things like toilet paper that they're also selling, eggs, produce. Doc's Backyard was selling big containers of bleach. So there are other types of supplies that these places are selling as well. And I was just thinking that in terms of it's the same thing that's come up before, getting this information out to residents so that they know, other than through word of mouth with your neighbors. It's hard to know what the best source is for that, because that's almost where social media would come in, where you can just do a quick, like, hey, here's a picture. Look what Doc's Backyard has. They've got jugs of Clorox bleach and a pile of toilet paper that they're selling. Because on the website, it's going to be tricky. People won't really visit that unless they're going to look something up or, I mean, I know that the police department.
They need to be reminded that they might want it.
What about next door? Because you can be on next door just for Sunset Valley, and I think there's about 100 houses that are on next door. That would be a really good way if we could get people, if they wanted to just be I'm in Sunset Valley, but I also have the surrounding neighborhoods, so I get everything. But if I could do a second one, I don't know if you can, and just have it Sunset Valley, then you can communicate with folks just right here, those who are signed up, and let them know what's going on in the city.
Who is doing did you call it a windshield count, or kind of going store to store?
So I did that.
It's a
She did it, and then I spent a Saturday doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. During the week, staff is out, again, just making sure that anybody who's changed hours, if they've changed delivery methods, if they've added a delivery method, or if they're even open anymore.
And where does that information get stored?
It's on the mayor's
On my
dashboard.
on the dashboard. So if I don't know if there's an
There's a,
opportunity for if you're walking into a restaurant like Cruzteca and someone's able to take a picture on their phone, it would easily be uploaded onto either Nextdoor or the Sunset Valley residents Facebook group, where that kind of stuff could be shared a little bit more easily with the people who live in our city.
So one thing that would be helpful for me, I went into Facebook a few weeks ago and I asked for one simple favor and I got 0 offers from the community. So what would be helpful right now, because I have had residents say, hey, Mayor, I know you must be really busy. I have. My law firm business, I'm now taking 0 clients and doing 0 paying work to sacrifice to do the volunteer work for the city. So if there are ways that residents could pull together on small things, and this would be a great example, if even one committee could say, hey, we're going to work together to whatever. I mean, and Catherine, that's where you also need one chief to sort of say, here's what we should put together. And then if you guys or a group could say, okay, we've done this, and then hand it off to Sylvia or I, it's then easier for us to push it through eye contact, which is going to capture more residents than Facebook or Nextdoor. But you could do the trifecta. You could say our community group will do the 2 community outlets, Facebook, Nextdoor, social media, and then hand it off to Sylvia and I to push through eye contact, and then permanently place it on our COVID dashboard that could have a section that's just in the community or how to support your retailers. So part of it is if somebody could do some of that footwork so that staff isn't, trying to do all of these new little projects.
Sure.
I think that's a great idea for a role that this committee could play while we're in the crisis itself, is helping our residents figure out, what can they do? Where can they get food? It's kind of mind-boggling going to the supermarket. I went today, and it's although a lot of them are organized, it's still kind of scary for especially those of us that are in that higher age category. I want to take a shower when I walk in the door and wipe off all my food, and it's a lot. So anything like that would be helpful if we could do an organized effort to kind of put that all in one place, post it on those 2 sites, and then push it over to the city to push out those other. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think so too. So if we have something we want to add, we can. How do we do it again, Rose? We send it to you or Sylvia?
Yeah, what would be helpful would be if somebody could sort of be the organizer for us, because as you can imagine, 10 people have 10 great ideas, but each idea is slightly different from the other. So if the idea is, let's put together all of the restaurants that are doing food and non-food bulk purchasing or selling. Okay, great. Is that the thing you want us to push? And then organize it so that you're being comprehensive. Because the other thing I want to be sensitive to is not picking and choosing. So if we're going to gather and push information, we need to make sure that we can confidently say, which is part of why I did my assessment, was so that residents can maybe take my tool and build upon it and say, okay, we see that this many restaurants are open. So then all you have to do is go to those restaurants and see, hey, are you selling this extra thing? Or like Catherine mentioned, the $1 margaritas. We could even have a thing that, I don't know, the sky's the limit of what you guys could come up with, but if somebody could come up with the idea, do the work, and then deliver it to us completed.
Okay, maybe that's a good opportunity for a work group or something. So it sounds like you can't just really go to your favorite place and take a picture and be like, oh, you should go to this place without damaging other restaurants. So maybe we can talk about having a work group for people who want to participate in that before we sign off. So I think probably, Aneshka, did you want to say something? Oh, I can't hear you, sorry.
There you go.
Catherine, I apologize. I wanted to say that I think that that's a really good idea, and I totally volunteer to be on the work group, because I bet we could just take that list and then just divvy it up and just give each of us call 3 or 4 places and just be like, hey, are you doing this? And then just report back to each other.
Okay.
Yeah, and even going back to the notice that I had put, which was on March 21st. So it looks like there's still a hole there, which is, it's a website that I think a local husband and wife created called Takeout Tracker. And so it's www.takeouttracker.com. And it's where they tried to create a comprehensive list of all restaurants in Austin so that if somebody's looking, they don't have to go to individual city websites or even go to individual delivery apps. And instead they can go to this one site and just type in, say, Funkadelic, and it will say, yes, Funkadelic is delivering. These are their COVID, their new hours of operation. These are all of the delivery options they're offering, including curbside or whatever. So one of my requests was that a resident or a group of residents go to that site, and there's a form you fill out to add restaurants. And so to just proactively say, let's look at all the Sunset Valley restaurants that are open and do the, like Aneshka just said, maybe each person takes 2 or 3 restaurants and it could be done in a day. And at least then we're doing what we can to help our restaurants ensure that they're on that free location.
Okay. All right. So before we sign off, let's make sure we talk about who would want to be part of a committee to help gather that information. Okay. So I think tying into number 7, what role does everybody's on our committee think that we should be doing to help the city plan for like COVID recovery?
This is Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Hello. I have been thinking about this a lot, and I mean, obviously I'm not on the budget committee. I don't know really any of the actual numbers on any of this, but I still think that going forward with getting plans for the uplands and around all of the things that we've been discussing over the last couple of meetings, particularly things that will generate recurring revenue for the city over a longer period of time. I think all of that is still valid, even in this crisis, and maybe even more so.
I agree. I mean, I think looking at Catherine's information, it felt like a lot of people value the environmental side of Sunset Valley as well as the open space. And I feel like Uplands, like as it is, offers both. And there's such a limited possibility of acquiring more land and open space in the future that I want to be really careful about, how we treat our assets. And we should view it as an asset. And I just want to make sure that the entire community has a say in what happens to it. Like, I'm worried that some hasty action is going to happen and someone's going to decide to sell it. Do we know what's happening with the appraisal? Actually, what happens with the appraisal or will happen with it? Is it on hiatus as well, or?
So it's not an appraisal; it's a valuation.
Sure.
And it will still be happening. And I've had to dispel that rumor many times pre-COVID, and I dispelled it again a couple times today. There is zero intention of selling the uplands. And so if that intention exists either with a council member or out in the public, it is not something that has been discussed by council, voted on by council. And another way you guys could look at it is maybe get a council member or 2 to sponsor an item where you do almost a reverse action, where you, instead of saying motion to sell the uplands, maybe you create a way to say we want council to take action to agree that they won't pursue selling the uplands unless, and create so that you can at least create those brackets to eliminate that fear that is going to be an option that the city considers.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Catherine, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes. Can I ask what the cost for the valuation will be? Do we know?
I can't remember what the budget was for, but it was already acted on, done, and I believe the firm has already been hired. So it's one of those where it's already done, and so there isn't a way to reverse it.
I thought I could be crazy, but I'm remembering the number like $2,000.
It was somewhere between 2 and 10, if I remember correctly, but it would be better for Sylvia or Carolyn if she happens to remember. I just don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was
I think
under
Ross,
10.
when he was looking at just comps, not anything in particular for us. He said that he generally saw it about 2,000, 2,500 with a couple weeks turnaround time.
All right, I have one other thing to add, if I may. You know, in terms of how we move forward and from our committee's perspective, I like the idea of putting forth a motion to not sell the uplands, but find a way to use it in ways that serve our community best. I also think that one of our duties could be to ensure that we continue to have to support and have a robust public works department, because in terms of what I was seeing from everybody who responded to me today, and I know my own personal feelings, that our green spaces in general are probably the number one thing that people responded that is important to them in the city, who I was able to ask today. I mean, some things people like are things that will not change, like proximity to downtown, and hopefully, you know, the size of our lots will not be something that changes because they can't be subdivided. So those are things that people really like. But the things that could change is if we have a public works department that is, you know, too small to manage all of our green spaces. If those things fall into disrepair or can't be used or accessed by the residents as much, I think that would be a huge problem for people who live here. It's something that every person mentions is something that they love about our city. So I guess just finding ways to support our public works department and all of the work that they do to maintain our green spaces.
I agree. Those are one of the things I love most about our city. Let's see.
Man, this is
Somewhat.
Helen.
Hey, Helen.
Hey, yeah, I'm concerned about that too, with the public works and not being able to maintain our green spaces. And the green spaces are why I'm here. So if there was something we could do about that, and I know we've taken away our environmental programs, but we were talking about having the Eco Watch, or whatever the name was. And I know there are volunteer groups in Austin. There's the Austin Parks Foundation, and they're citizen volunteer groups who go in and maintain trails. They pick up trash. They do all that kind of work. And right now we don't seem to have the resources to pull that together, but we do the trash pickups here. And I don't know if we don't have someone to spearhead that, I think that's going to be a problem. But in the interim, until we get our income back, the citizens could do a lot to maintain the trails with some supervision. So I think that would be something to consider, that something that P&E could be doing along with Public Works.
Okay.
To raise that kind of interest and get community interest in putting back. And I will just say one thing. You were talking about what it was like when we didn't have money. Well, I was here when we didn't have money, and I was on the council. And we had, back in those days, we had potholes. And when we had enough potholes, we would call the county, get a load of cold, can't what you call it, as cold asphalt. They would dump it on the side of the road, and the city council would go out with their shovels and their hose, and we would fill up potholes. When the public water system, which was an old iron water system in Karen's neighborhood, when that would have leaks, because it was one of those private water supply companies, and the city bought it, and that was before I got here. When that would leak in the middle of the night, our Mayor Underwood, would go out with her shovel, and she'd dig up the leak, and she would fix it. So that's two of the things that happen when you don't have money. That's what you do. The citizens just do the work. Okay. And we were a lot closer community, but we were also smaller. We had to work together, and things change, life changes, and we're in a completely different world. So I don't expect that will happen again, but that is a little bit of perspective. You can live with less money. It works. And it's not painful.
Thanks, Helen. And Anushka, did you have your hand raised?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. My internet keeps cutting in and out, so and I don't want to step on anyone again. And it's being very weird. I agree with all of these priorities. I think that the key to it, unfortunately, is still for the shopping centers to work. Because ultimately that's the only thing that can generate the amount of money that's needed to sustain all of this program, and it's all good program. I think I would definitely support a motion to not sell the upland. Have to say that the motion, or not even the motion, but I would also have to kind of address what I perceive as an elephant in the room, and it could not be, is that there's a lot of hot funds, right? And being on the community and economic committee, the development committee as well, I think that there's a lot of proposals to use those hot funds to try to do something to generate business in the city, and to do a marketing plan that brings more shoppers, that brings more people into the city when we get back on our feet. And those, that money is part of those hot funds that come from the hotels, and they're struggling now, as all of our businesses are. So I think on some level, I do believe that the uplands are going to, we should pursue it. I don't think we should sell it, but I also don't know if we can keep all of the money in the rainy day, because it's raining right now. Like it's raining right now on these businesses, and it's raining right now on where our community is. And so I think it's like you almost have to. I mean, everything else to me is a little bit like a Band-Aid on a broken leg. So it's like we have to fix these, have to get our sales up. And so I would also encourage us to keep an open mind about the marketing proposals and the things that are going to be proposed to do with hot funds to get some money into the city.
All right. I'm sorry, who is talking? Helen, do you have your hand raised?
I have my hand raised. I do, Helen. I just want to go back to the motion about not doing anything with the uplands. We also need to consider the property on Lone Oak, because that's tell me, Rose, Sylvia, is it 2 acres that we own? And every once in a while, someone thinks about selling that as part of our green space. It's at the very end of Lone Oak, but it's not really being used for anything except drainage, I think. They've got some drainage swales in there. And every once in a while, somebody wants to sell it, and the residents on Lone Oak protest, and so it goes away. But that is something that if we don't want to lose our green space, that probably ought to be considered as well in some kind of a decision by the council or a motion that that's available resource and that shouldn't be sold as well.
I can't speak for others, Helen. I can only speak for myself. It's on my list. It's on my list of assets that should be discussed. And you are correct. It will be, as with everything else that's come up tonight, everything at this point has some amount of controversy to it, because there's a handful of residents that feel personally connected to it. But yes, Lone Oak, I believe, is close to 5 acres. Carolyn, could you confirm how big the Lone Oak property is?
Yeah, it's definitely more than 2. I was gonna look it up real quick, but I didn't want to hold a lot of flashy screens. I'll get it to you in just a second. The total size of that.
And Helen, part of what I don't remember, I don't know because it's been a while, but things that were discussed were that it could be a public space, but I don't know what that would be. Other discussions were, and this is where it can be controversial to the residents near that property, would be that it could be similar to what we did on Country White, where we could portion off a green space that's adjacent to all of the homeowners, but sell back to the city a buildable residential lot.
And of course, it's not my street, so it doesn't bother me. But so I was just bringing that up, that it is something that we're going to need to consider, and that would be something that planning and environmental might be involved. And here's here's Lucy.
Yeah, I
She's
think
raising
Lucy
her hand.
raised
She lives on Lone Oak.
Okay, Lucy.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sacrifice. We may have to make sacrifices, but I can tell you that people on Lone Oak certainly don't want that to happen. We like our beautiful pasture full of bluebonnets and wildlife, and
Yeah,
it's a buffer at the end of the street. So
yeah. Okay.
And
anyway,
it's over 6 acres.
Over how many?
It's 6.25 about.
Okay. And Sarah, were you saying something?
Yes. What I've been wondering as we talk about all these different spaces, we haven't even really talked much about the space that's behind docks and that, is that Cougar Creek?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, we're putting out to bid like a marketing thing for the city for a firm. Is that right? I am wondering if it can be considered that we find an organization that can holistically help us plan maybe both the marketing and the planning of all of these spaces together, because we've thrown around a lot of ideas around development and around community amenities and potentially revenue generating activities. And we've put a lot of that thought into the uplands, but have not really thought about how all of these spaces connect to one another. And I feel like that is very integral in terms of the marketing, because if you're marketing an entire city, you have to think about the holistic plan. So I don't know if anyone has information about how that's going. That would be helpful to me.
It
Sarah,
is in
is that something you can
committee.
speak to? Sorry.
It's in CED committee. They have put it forward and cleaned up the last of the language. It went to council. It was approved to get advertised. I'll need to follow up on when that is supposed to hit the paper, and then whether or not council, after it's advertised and bid out, whether or not council will consider the award during this time.
Okay. Helen, do you have your hand raised?
I did. Sorry, I didn't realize I was crisscrossing conversations. When we're talking about Lone Oak and the uplands, we also, if we're talking about long range plans, we need to consider the 5 acres on Brody, which is prime for something because it is on Brody. We don't have access to that yet because the woman who lives there has a life estate, but she's elderly, and so long-term range, that definitely is a resource for the city. 5 acres.
I know, like, one of the things we talked about that's come up before is like connectivity and bringing the city together. And I do feel like that kind of ties into Sarah's question about how a marketing plan could also sort of like holistically address that question as well. I don't know if we have any suggestions about how to connect green space and the shopping centers and draw people in. I mean, I feel like these are all like long range things. Like, I don't know. I know one suggestion I've seen lately is like Art Fest and having it be like a profit making enterprise. And I was thinking, you know, a lot of the programs I love that Sunset Valley offers are canceled, but like I was so looking forward to Adventure Playground, and I was just thinking that, you know, we've been here for years and I never knew that that existed. And so I was just wondering how many other people don't know about it as well, and how, like, if that would be a draw to get people to come here. Like, what do you guys
Yeah,
think?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
The action that I was thinking was really around ensuring that the wording in the RFP and potentially a rubric that is used to decide who we choose includes the potential for hiring a firm that's incredibly holistic and that can touch all of these topics.
That's a great idea. Catherine, you have your hand up.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you're good.
it was toggling back and forth. I just didn't know whether some of these ideas need to be discussed at future meetings when we kind of know how we're able to move forward. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do anything. I mean, even going out and hiring, like if they move forward with hiring a firm to do this, I mean, are we really going to be doing any of that within the next few months? Or, I mean, we're not going to say, come shop in Sunset Valley, half our restaurants are closed right now. So,
Right.
like I guess I'm bringing it back to the agenda a little bit and just thinking about more immediately what our committee might be doing moving forward. And I can see how that fits in later. I'm just thinking more like over the next few months and on into the fall. Like I just wonder what we do have control over and what things are definitely going to be put on the back burner for a while we're like laying off staff and that kind of stuff. We can't really, I would think we can't think about spending money on, advertising and bringing people into our community quite yet. But correct me if I'm wrong. That's just my read on it and kind of what our role is right now and what the intent of this tonight's meeting is.
Is that correct? Like, are we going to be acting on the RFP anytime soon?
Aneska has
Well,
her
the RFP is out, but it's a process. So I think what will happen is you will see the RFP get responded to, assuming there are enough candidates, which was part of the problem why it got sent out again. Then you'll get the proposals. And at some point, we'll then be looking to see what's the scope of what we can afford. At that point, maybe we'll know more about COVID. Maybe the orders will be lifted. I mean, I think that we're certainly 30, 60, maybe more days out. I don't think it would be too early for your committee. It doesn't have to be tonight, but I don't think it's too early for your committee to think, in line with what Sarah just said, how could we creatively think about making sure that the firm that's picked is thinking of things that are important to different aspects of the community.
Okay.
But that wouldn't need to be included in the RFP because that's out already. So it would be more about the process of going through who does apply or submits proposals and what
Right, or even say, exactly, Catherine, or even saying we want to make sure that in their pitch, so you're giving them the best opportunity to also include it when they come to present to us. So Karen, you may remember when we were at that point before where we were trying to say, make sure when you guys pitch that you talk about the green space behind docks. I mean, that was an example that was thrown out. Like, make sure as you're thinking about how you would market our city that you think about all these unique aspects of our city.
Aneska has her hand up.
Yes.
Sorry,
Okay.
I can't see anything.
Oh, sorry guys. Oh, and I was just gonna say, I mean, it sounds so counterintuitive. Think about it. Oh, sorry.
No, you're on, Aneska.
Yeah, that's my dog, Aneska.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure I'm not messing up. Oh, okay, cool. No, I love the holistic point. I think it was like amazing. But I wanted to say it seems so counterintuitive to be thinking, oh, let's advertise our shopping centers right now when half the stores could be closed. But we kind of started off this discussion with saying, oh, let's advertise the fact that some people are selling, toilet paper, or oh, let's advertising in next door. We want to get the word of mouth in, I think when we this like very complicated, elaborate marketing proposal. No, I don't think it's going to be an 8-week thing. But I think about even just kind of simple advertising for whatever, if anything, is up and running. Even now, we're already talking about it because we already want to get the word out through next door, through other means. So I think even though it does seem counterintuitive, like we're not completely ready for business. We're going to need the money, so I think it is and I think it is a good idea to spend it on trying to get people to know more about our city and to get people into our city buying things from whatever stores are available. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, I just was really wondering tonight whether we need to be going off on that road or if we should put an agenda item for next month's meeting to maybe come up with like what we would be hoping to look for as we start to get applicants or proposals. And this is posed as a question, and Zoe, let me know, or anybody let me know if this is something we should be discussing now. I also just know that we're 2 hours in, and sometimes we tend to we like rush through the end of our agenda because we're pressed for time. So I wanted to just see if that's something we need to discuss now, or if we can put that on for next month and dedicate some good time to it, because it's a great idea for the future.
My question is, like, the timer at the top of my display shows that we have 3 minutes. Is that like a hard stop, or will we have a few more minutes to wrap up?
We have more time to wrap up.
Okay. I saw that Sarah has her hand raised. Is that right, Sarah?
Oh, yes, I figured out how I was able to log back in.
Okay, great.
But my very short final comment on this topic, because it sounds like the RFP is already out, is that this is a very long project. Like, actually getting marketing deployed I cannot imagine any scenario where that would happen any earlier than the very end of this year. The second thing about that is I'm wondering, on a shorter timeline, if there are opportunities for media around the RFP, like around community impact or Austin American Statesman or whatever, if the folks who are spokespeople for the community are able to just tell the media the types of talking points that we would want to see publicly from potential applicants, and that could help drive getting good applications. Does that make sense?
Sarah, could you go into your last point a little bit? I'm not sure I completely understood. Just concentrating more on media attention.
Right. So if the RFP is already out, is that what I'm understanding?
That's what it sounds like.
Correct.
Yeah. So if the RFP is already out, then potentially the fairest way to tell the public what we're looking for is to do a media interview, like with Community Impact or some other local organization, talking about the RFP and talking about the holistic vision of the city. That public information goes into the public domain, which means that anyone who sees it can know what we're looking for. And so if we say that we're wanting someone who can think about architecture and think about community space and all of these entangled issues, if our spokesperson can have those clean bullet points ready for an interview, then that could help us get a better candidate, a better set of candidates.
That sounds really good to me. I don't know. I mean, I know I've seen information in the community impact about cities of the valley, so I assume we have some experience with that. So it sounds like there's some desire to talk more about the RFP in the future. Maybe we could add it to a future agenda and see if we could come up with some recommendations before we start to wrap up the meeting. So, I mean, it sounded like one recommendation or one thing that we should do before we adjourn is talk about like a little work group to boost local businesses. And it sounded like Catherine and Eshka and I could work on that a little bit. I don't know if anyone else is interested. And it also sounded like there was some interest in possibly making a recommendation about not selling land, or like the counter recommendation to council about selling land. Or are there any other motions that people...
If I could just briefly give you guys the heads up that the council, as we talk on Tuesday, as we talk tomorrow, I'm sorry, I don't know what day it is, as we talk tomorrow, I keep reiterating there's a hard reset coming, because as the programs and projects and things are cut and discussed or suspended or reactivated or whatever happens, I think those are going to be the projects that this committee has to look at, specifically the planning part of it. That has to get some serious attention as we start to look at the land development code, and if there's anything we're going to be able to do to help some of these retailers survive or revamp or do whatever that needs to be. So if we could keep our focus on the planning side for a little while, I would sincerely appreciate it, because the council's going to need all of the help and direction it can get in that regard.
Sure.
And Zoe, to piggyback on that, I would just hope that everybody starts attending the meetings and communicating too individually with council members, because you know, your input does have weight, and there's lots of opportunities to participate. And I'd like to see more of our community be engaged in where we are and where we go moving forward.
So there's a virtual meeting tomorrow night to plan the financial workshop. What time is it? And if people can't attend, are there options for people to participate after the fact?
It's at 6
No,
o'clock.
you cannot participate. Yeah, thank you, Karen. You can do the time on it.
It's at 6 o'clock, and it's a COVID-19 budget work session, and it's no voting taking place. It's the information about where we are financially, where the shopping centers are, what we know so far and what we don't know, so that we can be informed on a regular basis as to where we are in this disaster.
Okay.
And
So,
Sylvia is also working on additional tools that will be released through our OpenGov platform that will allow for a more systematic way of publishing a meeting and allowing residents to contribute feedback after the meeting in a way where it's public and it's archived. To the question of can people participate after the fact, the only caveat I would get, and this is because I'm getting a larger number of emails from residents saying, hey, I can't attend the meeting, but would you read this into the record for me? That actually, in a time where decisions are divisive and difficult, it's not helpful for people to participate in that way. It really is much more helpful to council members to hear residents hear the motion, hear the discussion of the motion, and to participate in the actual motion or potential action that's on the floor while it's happening.
But for tomorrow's meeting, there will be no actions taken, and the way that residents can participate is just, is it video or it's all audio, or can, like,
It'll
how
be similar to this. It's a go-to meeting.
Just
So
like-
it's all of our other posted meetings, and there will be citizen comments at the middle point. Karen helped Sylvia and I put the agenda together. So we did put, the citizen comments aren't at the top. The intent being you might not know what you want to say until you've heard some of the discussion. And the comments aren't at the end, and that way residents don't feel like they were forced to wait till the end. So sort of at the midpoint of that meeting, we will open it up to allow any residents who are in attendance to comment.
Okay, thanks.
And to Rose's point too, I'm pretty excited about the new OpenGov platform that we're launching with the city, and that will be able eventually for us to have all the comments there that people want to put in during the meeting and after the meeting, and it's for everyone to see, so we can see all of it together. A lot of times if things are read into the record, it gets lost because people maybe didn't hear it, or you have to listen to a whole recording. So we're working on ways to have more options for citizens to have input through this OpenGov platform, and it's pretty exciting.
that's great. Okay. So do we have any motions that we think we're prepared to make?
Do we need to make a motion to form a working group for the, where is it written here? To pull information together about what places are open and what they have on offer. Do we need to make a motion to form that working group?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, Carolyn, is that right?
I would be very happy just to receive the information more than the sources that, you know, Carolyn and I can kind of muster together and have the mayor on the weekends, and anything and everything helps us build the most complete picture.
Okay. All right. So Anishka, I know I have your email. I can send out an email after the meeting, and we can talk about when to form a committee. So I mean, I know that we're going to be talking a lot about planning in the future and any changes to the code. I'm not sure exactly what changes the code would be necessary to help with COVID recovery. But I know that's something we need to consider.
Like temporary sign regulations or
Sure.
just, yeah.
Are we running into situations where those things are a problem right now?
Well, we've relaxed some of the sign code to allow them to do what we call the bandit signs, and then we've relaxed the parking so that nobody gets cited when they're using curbside stuff, and you know.
Okay, so we need to follow that up with changes in the code.
But there could also be, when you talk about like, specifically, I'm thinking of the sign code, you know, going forward, does the city want to have the same sign code with the reverse channel lighting, which makes the businesses really hard to see at night? And
Sure.
are there other changes that need to be made to help the businesses draw people in?
Sure. Okay.
So
Karen,
how about we ask Sylvia and Carolyn to think about those specific things they'd like us to think about and talk about and make recommendations on, and put that on our next agenda.
that sounds great. Yeah, because I don't think any of us are experts on where there are conflicts between the code and what businesses need to do to survive right now. Or I know I am not.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add? I think we're wrapping up. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand or anything. So, okay. So, Karen, I know the next agenda item is a meeting that was canceled, the joint committee meeting.
Yes, it's been postponed.
Okay.
Is there a reason why we can't just do it virtually?
It was basically having all of the committees get together and have a session where we'd have, you know, charts on the wall, and yeah, so it's a little difficult to do virtually. And there's now other things going on, and the extra council meeting, trying to get current information. Yeah.
Thank you.
That would change totally.
Okay. Well, then I guess I think the only thing we need to do is finish reviewing the minutes.
Okay, I've got it almost ready. Did I miss anybody on this list that's here that I somehow missed?
There's a Z.
So those can't be approved tonight. You'll have to.
Right. And Carolyn, there's a Z after the E in Anishka.
Or Neshka.
So Carolyn will send those out. One, it's very hard to read on the screen anyway. It's very hard to read what she's typing.
Yeah.
And two, you really need to read them, consider them, and then take action at the next meeting. So you don't need to wait for her to finish the minutes tonight.
Okay. All right, then if no one has anything further, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
You can unmute all. Catherine,
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, I heard a second from Aneshka. Okay. Who's in favor?
uh,
Aye.
All right. Hopefully some of us can make tomorrow's meeting, and if not, we'll meet probably virtually again soon.
love the kitty.
Yeah.
Lucy, please thank your dog for the entertainment tonight.
I know. I've been enjoying your friends.
Is our next meeting as scheduled for now?
As far as I know, like I think I asked to move this meeting because Mark is also on a committee and they moved to our night, and so things got shuffled around.
Okay.
Carolyn,
We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to see what the schedule is for budget and finance, and make sure that and public works and all those, and make sure we're not all meeting on the same night, because that gets a little crazy. But hopefully we can get back to the regular schedule the first Thursday in March. I mean in May.
Okay.
What is this?
Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, y'all.
Night.